My husband looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Who are you and why are you in my house?" That would have been heartbreaking if I hadn't just overheard him faking Alzheimer's to leave me for another woman. After 36 years of marriage, I realized I was just a placeholder in his love story. Want to hear how I turned heartbreak into power? Hit follow. This is only the beginning. My husband looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Who are you and why are you in my house?" That would have shattered me if I hadn't just overheard him, crystal clear, faking Alzheimer's to make me say the word divorce first. 36 years of marriage, and this is what it came down to: a performance, an exit strategy dressed up as an illness. Raymond Blake wasn't always like this. He used to be a lion of a man, sharp, commanding, the kind of person people instinctively moved aside for in a hallway. I met him when I was 22, working 2 part-time jobs and still thinking hamburger helper counted as cooking from scratch. He was already on his way up, a promising tech engineer who turned ideas into money, fast. And me? I had love, loyalty. A belief that if I just gave enough, sacrificed enough, maybe I'd earn the right to stay in his world. Over time, Raymond's company exploded. We moved from a tiny rental apartment to a 2-story brick house in a gated neighborhood in Austin, Texas. He built empires, I built a home. He made money, I made everything else. I cooked, cleaned, raised our son Lucas, remembered birthdays, and kept quiet when deals ran over dinner. That was our dynamic, and I didn't question it, until the day he forgot who I was, or pretended to. The diagnosis came on a grey Wednesday morning. Early stage Alzheimer's, the doctor had said, his voice too gentle to trust. Raymond had been forgetting things. Simple things. Our Wi-Fi password. Where he left the car keys. The name of the cat we'd had for a decade. But what he forgot first was me. He'd glance at me with those cold, detached eyes, like I was a guest overstaying her welcome. "Ma'am, do you live here?" he asked one morning, his tone polite, robotic. It cut deeper than anything I could have imagined, but I stayed. I brushed his teeth when he forgot how. I cut his food into small pieces. I watched cartoons with him on mute because the sound bothered him. I adjusted. I didn't complain, because that's what you do when you love someone, right? You stay. Until one night, I walked past the guest bedroom, his new favorite hideout when the world became too noisy, and I heard him on the phone. His voice was calm, clear, not foggy or childlike like he usually pretended to be. "I'm just trying to push her to say it first," he said flatly. "If she says she wants the divorce, I can walk away clean. Vivian's been waiting long enough." My breath caught. Vivian. That name wasn't new. It had echoed around our past like a ghost I was never allowed to acknowledge. She was his what-if girl. The one who left him for grad school in Boston back when he was still broke and dreaming. I always knew a piece of him stayed behind with her. I just didn't know he'd use a degenerative illness to crawl back to her. In the kitchen, the soup I had made for him sat untouched. Again. He said it was too salty, too bland, too hot, too cold. That night, he spilled the bowl on purpose and watched me clean it in silence. And now I knew why. This wasn't illness. This was orchestration. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the laundry room, staring at the washer, turning slow cycles, trying to wrap my mind around what I'd heard. The man I loved, no, the man I built my life around, wasn't losing his memory. He was losing his conscience. At dawn, I made him breakfast like nothing had happened. Scrambled eggs, his favourite way, toast with just a hint of strawberry jam. I set the plate in front of him. He looked at me with that hollow, lost expression and said, "Thank you, Mum?" I smiled, not because I was happy, but because I was planning. If he wanted me to be the villain in his story, I'd let him. But I was going to write the ending. And this time, I wouldn't disappear quietly. I stayed. I stayed longer than I should have, and maybe that was my second mistake. Right after marrying a man who could fake a disease to escape me. I needed to see it through, needed to understand just how far he was willing to go. So I kept cooking, kept folding his shirts, kept letting him forget my name in front of our son, our neighbours, the grocery store clerk. Every time he looked at me with those vacant eyes, it burned less, because now I knew they weren't real. He wasn't fading. He was hiding. Vivian came around 3 weeks later. She knocked on the door like it was her house, not tentative, not guilty, like she belonged there. She had on this beige cashmere sweater set and a gold chain that sparkled even in the cloudy Texas light. "I'm just here to help," she said sweetly, her smile landing somewhere between condescension and cruelty. Raymond, who had refused to speak full sentences for days, suddenly lit up. "Vivi," he said, like he was 20 again. She brought casseroles. She rearranged the furniture. She spoke to me like I was the help. And the worst part? He let her. One night, as I was clearing dinner, she asked Raymond if he wanted tea. He smiled, really smiled, the way he hadn't smiled at me in months, and said, "If you make it, I'll drink it." I dropped a plate. Not on purpose, my hands just gave out. The sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. They didn't even flinch. That night, I sat in the bedroom alone. The bed felt foreign, too big, too cold. I pulled out our wedding photo album. There we were, young, tan, sweaty from a summer courthouse wedding, and smiling like idiots. I had on a $40 dress and held daisies from the grocery store. He looked like a man who believed in me, but even then I think I believed in us harder than he did. The next morning, something broke. I brought him his breakfast, eggs, toast, coffee, the usual, and set it down. He looked at the plate, then looked at me and muttered, "Didn't I tell you not to bother me when I'm with my wife?" Vivian wasn't even in the room, but she might as well have been. I tried to turn away, but he reached out suddenly, aggressively. "You're in my space," he snapped. Then he shoved the plate across the table. It spilled. Coffee splashed onto his lap, and in a flash of frustration, or maybe instinct, he stood and pushed back his chair too hard. It hit my knee. I stumbled, lost balance, hit the edge of the kitchen island with my temple. The lights dimmed for a second. When I came to, he was just standing there, staring. Not shocked, not apologetic, just blank. "Who are you?" he asked again. But this time his tone wasn't confused, it was cold, calculated, like he meant it as a threat. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I stood, walked to the bathroom, cleaned the blood from my hairline and packed a single overnight bag, jeans, a sweater, my toothbrush, the wedding album. I took it, not because I still believed in it, but because I needed to remember who I used to be, before I was his wife. Lucas called me that evening. "Mum, you didn't tell Dad you were leaving. He's really upset," he said, like I'd skipped dinner plans, not escaped emotional warfare. "He said you were acting erratic, that you tried to hurt him." That was when I realized how deep the act went. Raymond wasn't just trying to escape. He was building a narrative where I was the unstable one, the hysterical wife, the burden. And maybe, just maybe, he planned to make me disappear not just from his life, but from everything. 2 days later, I saw a video on his social media, a smiling photo of him and Vivian, her arms around him, a blanket over his knees, sipping tea. The caption read, "Cherishing the time we have left, thankful for those who bring peace into our lives." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it confirmed everything. I wasn't his wife anymore. I was just the woman who knew too much. But I wasn't going to disappear. Not quietly, not kindly, and definitely not on his terms. I moved into a furnished room above a bookstall downtown. It smelled like old paper and fresh lavender, and there was a tiny kitchen that barely fit a single burner and a sink, but it was mine. No one yelled when I dropped a fork. No one asked why dinner was late. The silence was loud, but it didn't hurt. Not yet. I kept telling myself this was temporary, a place to breathe, to gather myself, to plan the next move. I didn't know that this cramped attic over someone else's dreams would become the space where I built my own. I met Sasha on a Tuesday, which already felt like a day made for misfits. She was singing Fleetwood Mac covers on a small patio stage outside the bookstore, barefoot and wearing a leather jacket 2 sizes too big. Her voice was honey with a hint of cigarettes. I was sipping coffee that had gone cold when she sat next to me and said, "You look like someone who used to love hard and got burned quietly." I didn't ask how she knew. Maybe pain has a scent only some people recognize. We talked. She was 28, said she'd lived in 4 cities in the last year and hadn't paid rent in 3. She offered me a bite of her half-eaten bagel like we'd known each other forever. I told her I had just walked out of a 36-year marriage that wasn't real. She didn't say, "I'm sorry." She said that must feel like waking up from a coma you didn't know you were in. And that's when I decided I liked her. Sasha introduced me to the idea of soft power. She said, "You don't have to punch to hit hard. You just have to be louder than the story they're trying to write for you." She filmed me the next day, sitting in the window light with my hands wrapped around a mug, and asked, "What's the first thing you did after you left him?" I looked straight into the camera and said, "I made eggs, for myself, with cheese." It wasn't profound, but it was mine. She uploaded it to an account she created called Divorce Diaries with Aunt Nora. I rolled my eyes, told her no one wanted to hear from a 65-year-old woman who hadn't held a job since the 80s, but she said, "They don't want perfection. They want permission." I didn't understand until the video hit 30,000 views in 2 days. Comments poured in. Women in their 40s, 50s, 60s saying they felt seen. Some whispered thanks. Others screamed. One wrote, "I haven't cooked eggs for myself in 15 years. I forgot I liked them with chives." That first video opened the floodgates. Sasha filmed me baking cookies while I told stories about the early years of my marriage. How I thought love meant keeping quiet, how I convinced myself I was lucky just to be chosen. We posted a video of me dancing in my socks to Bonnie Tyler while I talked about the first time Raymond missed our anniversary. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. And apparently, real was rare. I started going by Aunt Nora online. It stuck. People asked for advice, recipes, book recommendations. A woman in Ohio messaged me about leaving her controlling husband. A teen in Nebraska told me her mum watched my videos and smiled for the first time in months. I wasn't trying to be anyone's role model. I was just trying to remember who I was before I became someone's afterthought. And still, every now and then, the past found me. One afternoon, I got a call from Lucas. It was short, tight. He said Dad had filed to remove me from all remaining joint accounts. Said it was just paperwork. I told him that was fine. I didn't want his father's money. Lucas paused, then added, "He said you're spiraling, posting weird videos, making up lies about your marriage." I laughed. One of those sharp, bitter ones that scratches your throat. "And what do you think, Lucas?" I asked. He didn't answer, just said, "Take care," and hung up. That night, I cried. Not for Raymond, but for the little boy who used to bring me dandelions and call them mum flowers. The one who used to scream when he had a nightmare until I held his hand. I cried because I realized that even after everything, I still wanted my son to believe me. And maybe he never would. Sasha found me curled up on the couch, holding our second-hand throw blanket like it could fix me. She didn't say anything, just sat down and turned on music. Old jazz. We listened in silence for a while before she said, "You're not broken. You're just peeling off someone else's skin." In the morning, we made pancakes. I added blueberries, she added too much cinnamon. We posted a video called "How to Cook for One and Still Feel Full." It got 100,000 views. I wasn't starting over. I was starting for the first time. The email came at 7:13 a.m. on a Saturday. Subject line, "Incident Report, Request for Statement." It was from a caseworker at Adult Protective Services. According to the complaint, Raymond had suffered a fall in our former home. The report claimed there was evidence of repeated emotional distress and possible physical neglect. It took me 3 tries to read it all the way through. My hands were shaking too badly. I called Lucas. He didn't pick up. Called again. Voicemail. I didn't leave one. What would I even say? That the man who faked Alzheimer's to get rid of me was now pretending I pushed him? That the woman who moved into my home before I moved out was helping him build a legal case against me? It sounded insane. It felt worse. Sasha found me sitting on the kitchen floor, the email open on my phone. She read it in silence, then looked up with a mix of rage and pity I hadn't seen before. "They're trying to erase you," she said softly. "Not just from the house, from the whole damn narrative." Over the next few days, things escalated fast. My online accounts were flooded with anonymous comments calling me a liar, a grifter, a fame-hungry old woman exploiting a sick man. A YouTube reaction video titled, "Is Aunt Nora Faking It?" got over 50,000 views in a weekend. They pulled clips of me dancing, laughing, telling stories, and twisted them. "She doesn't look traumatized. She's performing. Where's the proof?" Proof. That word echoed in my skull. I had no proof. The bruises had healed. The surveillance cameras in the house had mysteriously been reset. The only witnesses were Raymond, who played sick when it suited him, and Vivian, who was perfectly polished and vicious beneath her southern charm. It was my word against theirs, and I was losing. Then came the worst part. A lawyer showed up at my tiny apartment with a manila envelope. Inside was a property reassignment agreement, signed by Raymond and Lucas. Effective immediately, the house was now legally under Lucas's sole name. It was a financial protection strategy, the lawyer explained, to shield the estate, to ensure Raymond's medical costs would be covered. I stood there, holding the document, barely hearing him over the pounding in my ears. Lucas had taken the house, the one I scrubbed baseboards in while pregnant, the one I painted every spring, the one where I held him after his first fever, his first heartbreak, his first steps. And now I didn't just not live there. I didn't even exist on the deed. I called him one last time. This time, he answered. "Where?" I asked. No greeting, no softness left in me. "It's complicated," he said. "Dad's not well. Vivian's trying to stabilize things, and your online stuff, it's messy, Mum. It makes things worse." "I make things worse?" I repeated, stunned. "You know what your father did. You know he faked the entire thing." He sighed. "Maybe, but he's still Dad. And I'm what?" I said. "A PR problem." Silence. "That house was mine," I said, voice shaking. "That life was mine, and you just signed it away." "I had to pick a side," he said quietly. "And Vivian, she's making sure he's taken care of." I wanted to scream, to break something. But I didn't. Instead, I hung up, and for the first time since I'd left that house, I allowed myself to fall apart. Sasha held me as I sobbed, the kind of sobbing that's ugly and primal and louder than words. When it was over, I felt hollow, like a room with all the furniture ripped out. "They took everything," I whispered, "even my name." But 2 days later, something strange happened. One of my videos, an old one, the one where I talked about how I stayed in a marriage too long because I thought love meant loyalty, went viral. Again, a podcast picked it up, then a celebrity chef reposted it, then a news outlet reached out. They wanted to interview Aunt Nora, the woman who made grief into comfort food. I almost said no, but Sasha grabbed my phone and typed back, "Would be honoured." We filmed a new video that night. I sat in the soft light of our living room, hair in a loose braid, wearing my favourite sweater. No script, no filters. "I'm not perfect," I said. "I'm not always right, but I'm real. And real women, we don't disappear. We don't fade quietly, we rebuild. We speak up, and sometimes we bake banana bread with bourbon in it just to survive the week." That video got 500,000 views. The comments weren't all kind. Some were cruel. Some questioned my version of the story, but others, so many others, said, "Thank you." Said, "Same." Said, You made me feel brave. They took my house. They tried to take my voice. But they forgot. I built something stronger than walls. I built a community. It had been 8 months since I left. 8 months since I packed my bag, walked out of the house I cleaned more than I ever lived in, and learned how to be a woman again. Not a wife, not a caregiver, not a ghost who haunted the background of someone else's life. Just Nora. And then came the call. Not from Raymond, not even from Lucas. It was from a nurse at St. Gabriel's Memory Care Facility. She said Raymond had wandered off the premises during his morning walk and hadn't returned. They were contacting emergency contacts. Apparently, I was still listed. The irony nearly made me laugh. He'd spent months trying to erase me, and now I was the name they'd turned to when he vanished. I didn't answer right away. I let the voicemail sit for a full hour while I made tea and scrubbed the kitchen counter with more force than necessary. Sasha sat across from me, silent, waiting for me to breathe again. Finally, I called the facility. They hadn't found him yet. He had last been seen wearing a navy sweater and house slippers, walking toward the east trail behind the building. No phone, no ID. Just a confused, sick man with a sharp mind buried under layers of damage. Some self-inflicted. 3 hours later, the police found him. Not at the park, not at the facility, but sitting on the front porch of our old house, the one that no longer belonged to me. He was curled up on the welcome mat, arms wrapped around his knees, whispering something under his breath over and over again. The neighbour who found him said he looked like a child lost in a storm. Lucas brought him inside, gave him tea, called me again. I didn't answer, this time not out of anger, but because I didn't know what he wanted me to do. Be the mother? The ex-wife? The woman who held his father's hand for 3 decades and still didn't get a thank you? 2 days later, a letter arrived. Not an email, a real letter in shaky handwriting, addressed to me. Nora, it began. I remember now. Not everything. Not the dinners, or the birthdays, or the trips you planned that I ignored, but I remember your voice. I remember that you used to sing in the car when you thought I was asleep. I remember the night I was sick and you held my head and whispered, "You're not alone." I remember that. And I remember hurting you. He went on. I married you because I thought I should, because you were good, steady, safe. I thought love was supposed to feel like logic, and when it didn't, I blamed you. I waited for Vivian because I thought she was passion, but when she left me, again, during the worst of my decline, I realized passion without kindness is just noise. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted to say I remember. And I hope wherever you are, you've built something better than what I gave you, because you deserved it all along. I read it twice, then 3 times, and I didn't cry. I felt nothing. Not hate, not pity, just a strange emptiness, like standing in a house after the furniture's gone and realizing you never liked the decor in the first place. Vivian had left him. Of course she had. 6 months into caretaking, she filed for divorce, took her half and vanished to Florida. She left behind a signed affidavit stating that Raymond was no longer emotionally compatible with the environment she required, whatever that meant. Lucas visited me, in person, for the first time since the house transfer. He stood in the doorway, awkward, like a stranger at a family reunion. "Dad keeps asking for you," he said. "You don't have to see him, I get it, but he's not going to last much longer. And it's your name, he says, over and over." I almost told him no, almost slammed the door, but something in his face, maybe guilt, maybe hope, stopped me. I said, "I'll think about it." A week later, I went. Just once. Raymond was lying on a recliner in a quiet corner of the facility, wrapped in a blue blanket, looking smaller than I remembered. His hair was thinner, his face softer, his hands trembling slightly with age and whatever else time had stolen. He looked up when I walked in. His eyes squinted, confused at first, then wide. "Nora?" he said. "Not ma'am, not hey." "My name, just that." I nodded. He reached for my hand. I didn't offer it, just stood there, present, watching. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I know," I said. "Can we start again?" "No," I said gently. "We already ended." His face crumpled, just a little. Not dramatic, just human. He looked down at his lap. "I don't want to be alone." I finally spoke after a long silence. "You already were, even when I was there." He nodded, like he understood, or maybe just accepted it. I left 20 minutes later. Outside, the sky was overcast but warm. Sasha waited in the car, blasting Stevie Nicks and waving at me like we were off to a beach instead of driving away from a goodbye. I didn't feel relief or sadness. I felt finished. And for once, that was enough. 3 years after I walked out of that house, I stood on a stage in front of 500 people in downtown Dallas. The lights were warm, the seats were packed, and my hands were trembling just slightly. Not from fear, but from the sheer weight of the moment. I wasn't here as a guest. I wasn't someone's +1. I was the keynote speaker at a women's empowerment summit. The big red TEDx letters behind me made it real. My name tag read, Nora Blake, creator of Divorce Diaries. I never imagined I'd be introduced with applause instead of silence. I took a breath and said, 3 years ago, I made scrambled eggs for one, and it was the most powerful thing I'd done in 36 years. The room exhaled with me. Some laughed, some teared up, but every single person leaned in, like they'd been waiting for someone to say it out loud. I told them the story. Not every gritty detail, not every bruise or betrayal, but the bones of it, the slow erasure of self, the moment of realization, the long, lonely climb back to my own name. I told them about the first time someone commented, "You remind me of my mum. She used to be strong too." And how that word "used to" broke me and built me all at once. After the talk, women lined up to hug me, to cry, to say, "You made me brave." I held hands with strangers who had left marriages, jobs, expectations. One woman handed me a letter and said, "This is from my daughter. She watches your videos in secret. She's 16. You're teaching her how not to disappear." I kept that letter in my wallet. Life didn't magically become perfect, but it became mine. Sasha and I moved again, this time to a small farmhouse outside Austin. We painted the porch yellow, planted wildflowers. She started recording her music again. I kept making videos. Aunt Nora became a household name in a niche nobody knew they needed. Middle-aged women who weren't ready to fade. We started a small business. We sold comfort boxes, curated care packages with homemade jam, handwritten recipes, playlists, and a note from me that always ended with, "You're not too late to begin." Orders came from all over the country. We couldn't keep up, but we didn't need to. It was never about the boxes, it was about the stories people sent back. Some nights I'd still think of Raymond, not in anger, not even in sorrow, just in recognition. He was the chapter I closed so I could become the author of the rest of the book. I heard he passed peacefully 6 months after our last meeting. Lucas called to tell me. I sent flowers. I didn't go to the funeral. I had nothing left to bury. A few weeks later, I got a package in the mail. It was from Lucas. Inside was a photo. Me, Raymond, and Lucas, taken 25 years ago on a camping trip I barely remembered. I was wearing a flannel shirt 2 sizes too big and laughing, holding a burnt marshmallow. There was a note. "Mum, I didn't know how much I didn't know. I'm sorry it took me too long to see it. Thank you for being stronger than I understood. Love, Lucas." I cried. Not because I wanted anything back, but because it finally felt like I hadn't completely disappeared from his version of the story. The last video I uploaded before taking a break for the season was filmed on our porch. Sasha was behind the camera. I wore a sunflower apron and held a pie I'd overbaked on purpose. I looked into the lens and said, "I'm not a relationship expert. I'm not a therapist. I'm just a woman who thought her life was over and then found out it was only just beginning." I paused, then added, "To the ones who are grieving someone still alive, to the ones packing a bag with more fear than hope, to the ones making scrambled eggs for one, this is for you. You are not broken. You are becoming." Then I smiled. A real one, the kind that doesn't hide behind anything. And as the sun set behind me, I said the thing I wish someone had told me back then. You are allowed to start over, and you don't need anyone's permission but your own.